Today's Hardball Talks was a fun one with Hunter Hisky, who dove into player development, why it's important to him, the data that he found when surveying coaches who were recently out on the field and seeing where player development needs to increase, and how he's going to assist in bringing that inside of the training environments this year. So a really fun discussion on player development with Hunter Hisky. Hope you enjoy. Welcome back to Hardball Talks. Today we have Hunter Hisky, who recently has become the head of player development at Extreme and Turn 2, and we will be diving into all things player development. So let's go ahead and get started. Hunter, recently you put out a survey to all the Extreme Elite baseball coaches, kind of reflecting on this past summer. Maybe just tell us what was that survey? What was your goal there? Share a little bit on that.
Yeah, so first of all, thanks for having me. Glad to be on. And my survey idea, I just kind of was diving into this whole idea of becoming more of a lead role in the player development space that we have. And my first kind of order of business, I was just kind of thinking how to get started. And I just wanted to hear from our coaches and just see what areas of emphasis we've been missing in the past 2 years or past several years, maybe not even missing, just that we need to draw a little bit more attention to.
Mm-hmm.
So I just kind of sat down and brainstormed and reached out to a couple of our other trainers and just thought how many areas could we come up with to kind of categorize our player development. And I came up with, I believe it was like 16 or 17 categories, and I just made a little Google Doc in a form and sent it out, and basically had our coaches fill out kind of their top three they felt a need for going forward in our training.
What were some of the examples of some of the 16 or 17 that you had on there?
So things like baseball IQ, that kind of morphed a lot of them into one. So that cut down on the amount, which was probably a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But that basically goes into calling pitches, base running, getting reads in the outfield, that kind of thing. Shifting, maybe infield, outfield positioning without a coach having to remind the player, essentially. Then you got speed and agility, general strength and size, pitch profiles, like stuff, and then compare that to pitch command, like how well can you locate your stuff. Approach at the plate versus just general, like how physical are our hitters, that type of thing.
Yep. So let's start with maybe some findings. Think of the pitching side of the game. What were some findings? Was there any surprises? What did you see come out of that data?
Yeah, I don't know that I was necessarily surprised with it just because of the state of our game today, but 62% of our coaches had command as one of the things that's listed as a need. And I believe it was like 12%. Yeah, 12% of our coaches said stuff. So everybody's pretty happy with the stuff that our guys are putting out there. We can spin the breaking ball.
Right.
We can throw the fastball with authority. We have good velo up and down the board, but it's really a lack of command.
Yep. Shift over to offense. Give us a breakdown a little bit of what you found there.
So actually kind of similar findings, not quite as drastic, but we had over 50% of our coaches say that approach at the plate and bat to ball skills need to be a focus of ours, while about 12% said like the general physicality of our hitters was one of the things that was desired. So majority says that we need to really focus in on our approaches, our getting the barrel to the baseball, as opposed to building up our exit velos and hitting, focusing on hitting it as hard as we can and hitting them over the fence consistently, because we do that pretty well as a whole throughout the organization.
Share on maybe one more topic on this, and we're going to dive a little bit more into this later on. But what about baseball IQ? What did you see from that data?
So that was probably the most sought after category. 75% of our coaches said that baseball IQ was something that needs to be attacked this offseason.
Yep.
That essentially it's an all-in-one thing. Like it comes down to how to manage a game from the catcher position, how center fielders are shifting outfielders around, and knowing hitters' tendencies, knowing pitchers' tendencies, our shortstops commanding the infield and helping get our infielders set. Or do we have true captains out there and real leaders out on the field that
Yeah.
don't necessarily always require a coach to step in or call a mound visit and get things situated? Can we rely basically on our players to be extra coaches on the field for us?
Yeah. That's great. That's great. That was a really I got to be a part of that exercise. From I got to answer that survey and give some thoughts on it, as did all of our other coaches. And I thought it was a really proactive way to reflect on what was happening on the field and to be able to attack that inside of the training environment. So we'll dive a little bit more into that and how maybe some player development adjustments that you'll make this offseason. But before we do that, let's maybe reflect back on your career. And so if I just ask this question, why is player development so important to Hunter Hisky? And maybe even we'll start off by simplifying it and saying, tell us one word that represents your player development as you kind of went through the youth and high school, college, and pro ball. What's one word?
Man, that's tough. I guess perseverance, probably. That just kind of sums up every part of my baseball journey as a player. Like high school, that's why I'm so passionate in the player development area, because I really had to work for everything that came to me. Like high school, I was not very highly sought after. I had a couple of Division II offers. One of those Division II offers essentially told me that I could go there, but I'd be a preferred walk-on bullpen catcher basically for 4 years, and I could just be part of the team.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, the other one kind of promised that I had a chance for growth and had a chance to eventually contribute. So that was Southwest Baptist. So that's where I ended up going, and um, went there as a redshirt. I was very lucky to go play after high school. Went there, redshirted my freshman year, and just kind of made a decision that I was going to just devote all my time and effort into being a contributor at some point in my college career. That was my kind of
Awesome.
number one. That was my number one goal. So I used that redshirt year to just dive into educating myself about how to treat the weight room, how to eat right, how to implement conditioning into my routine, and then really leaning on my previous coaches and hitting instructors all throughout high school to keep building my swing into a spot that I knew I'd be successful in college. And that year, that redshirt year where it was strictly just about developing me, was probably the best thing that could have happened to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then I ended up after that getting the opportunity to start for 4 years in a row, with a lot of bumps along the way with dealing with injuries. I had Tommy John surgery after my sophomore year. I had knee surgery right before my senior year. Um, I was ready to just finish out my college career and call it quits, and then ended up getting an opportunity to go play in a winter ball league, where I had a chance to get signed to play indie ball. And then, of course, COVID happens right before my first rookie season.
Right.
So basically, that 2 years from my senior year, dealing with all the injuries and everything, to my first year of pro ball was more development. I kind of treated it as like a second red shirt season, and then had a good, was fortunate enough to have some success in independent ball. And now I'm excited to share that with the next kind of wave of players that we got coming through here.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a great story of a great journey there of perseverance. And there's a lot of those hiccups along the way that would cause athletes to maybe jump off the ship.
Right.
The injuries, the COVID, the not getting huge scholarship opportunities or whatever it may be. But you talked about how those adversity moments were moments that actually propelled you to another level.
Right.
And you use that time in a productive way. You mentioned the weight room and nutrition. I know that's a big focus of yours, to kind of connect the weight room and the skill development and make sure that they're kind of working collaboratively. Can you share a little bit on that?
Yeah. So you always need a clear direction especially for a facility or an academy with so many athletes coming through it, you need kind of a general direction of where your strength department is going to go with it. And quite frankly, to 99% of our athletes, we need more general strength. We need more general speed and quickness training, being able to move throughout the three planes of motion really well. And then our skill development, let's just let our skill development sessions be what they are. We can implement the specific skill movements into our skill training as opposed to in the weight room. Sometimes I think we got in the weeds in the past where we were trying to get a little bit too specific and cater to the top 1% of guys that need that skill specific training implemented into their weight room sessions. I think that we're going to appeal a lot better just to the everyday athlete and the majority of our guys coming through here if we just stick to the basics and do the basics really well. You master kind of the big three movements: squat, bench, deadlift. You learn how to move through those really well. That's going to build general strength. That's going to build power. It's going to build speed and quickness if you implement some sprint work in the weight room as well. And then we can allow some of our med ball throws and our rotational work to bleed into our skill training.
Very cool. Very cool. You then talked, I heard you also talk about that year when you were redshirted that you had a nutrition focus as well. Maybe how do you see that coming into play for athletes making the transition to the next level?
Right. So I was a little bit different than most of our guys. I feel like most high school baseball players are trying to put on weight. I was kind of the opposite, where I needed to trim down a little bit and get in better shape. So it was a little bit more of a nutrition, like a little bit different focus with my nutrition
Mm-hmm.
in terms of really checking my caloric deficits, making sure I was getting I tried to eat my body weight in protein. That was kind of my thing. I know that different people have different theories on that, but I tried to eat my body weight in grams of protein, and then I just tried to make sure that I was burning more calories than I was taking in.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, I used MyFitnessPal, just an easy app to track all my calories and everything that I ate. But I just that year where I was really trying to change my body, I just made sure that I kept track of everything I was putting in my body, and then trying to pair that with my heavy workout days. I eat a little bit heavier, maybe consume a little bit more calories. My lighter days, I tried to eat a little bit lighter, stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, Talk about that adversity and how you see athletes kind of train through adversity. Like, how do they, I know that's an important kind of style of training, or just an important, I don't know if the word style, but an important environment is to train harder than the game is, or to bring adversity into your training. Maybe share on how you've seen that be a successful approach to training.
Yeah. I mean, failure is kind of the nature of sports in general, but especially the sport we chose to try to teach, right? It's, you fail. The old saying, you fail 70% of the time and you're an all-American, Hall of Famer, you name it, all-state guy. So that's a big part of training, in my opinion, is learning how to deal with that failure, whether that's in a more general spectrum, like you're dealing with a bad season. How do you bounce back the next year from that? Or maybe you just get in a little bit of a 2 or 3 game funk where you're not seeing the ball quite as well. You have to have the skills necessary to have a short memory, bounce back, and kind of stay the same person no matter what the results on the field are. So I think it's really important to implement failure into our training. Like I was always a guy that I wanted that. Like I hear guys complain all the time about the machines or throwing change ups and the occasional cutter, slider, or whatever, when it's supposed to be set to just fastballs down the middle. And I'm like, man, that's an opportunity that or your pitcher in game isn't going to just be throwing you fastballs down the middle every time. So why not, if a machine's making it difficult on you, why not,
Yeah.
use that as a chance to dig in, get competitive, try to be the one guy that stands out and the guy that owns that machine.
Yeah.
I always looked at that as kind of an opportunity. Anytime that you're challenged, that's an opportunity to stand out and, prove prove something to yourself and prove something to the rest of your team.
Yeah, and there really is a tangible correlation there between what we see and the needs are on the field. You know, you mentioned that the coaches talked about bat to ball and that being a low metric or a low success rate right now, and then you compare that to that example that you just gave, which is, you know, guys, you know, frustrated with inconsistent you know, pitches coming in during training, or whether that's a machine or BP or whatever. And it's like there's a correlation there. Excuse me. There's a correlation there between, you know, a low bat to ball rate and, you know, only being able to train in kind of a cookie environment, you know, a real
Right.
simple pitch environment. And there is an opportunity there for us coaches and trainers to shift that, to bring adversity in and get our athletes comfortable with that, so that when it does happen on the field, those excuses will go away.
Well, yeah, man, it's like every facility now, or every training setting, you've got to have, every kid wants the Rapsodo or the TrackMan or the Hit Tracks or wherever they're at. Like, there's all kinds of, pretty much you're irrelevant if you don't have one of those pieces of technology in your training space nowadays. And it is fun. Like, it's fun to track your exit velo, and there is some benefits to it, because there is, you know, tangible data that says the harder you hit the ball, the greater your percentage of getting a hit is. So that is a thing. It is a metric you should track, but I don't know that it necessarily needs to be tracked every single time that you go in the cage and hit. I can't tell you how many pro guys that I've run into that have said they hate hitting on Rapsodo, because they can maybe just have a day where they're moving slow and they're not putting out their normal output, but they are barreling everything. But
Mm-hmm.
in the past, when they didn't have that piece of technology, when they're barreling everything, they walk out of the facility thinking they're the greatest hitter of all time.
Yep.
But now, then nowadays you're catching barrels all over the place, and the Rapsodo is telling you you're down 10 miles an hour.
Yep.
So then you start getting out of your element, you start over swinging, then you start moving the wrong way. So I think there are benefits to training with the tech and tracking the physicality of yourself as a hitter, but overall, that's not what makes you a good hitter.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, that's great. And really, let's maybe even dive into that. I mean, you know, you talked about that the IQ stuff is what is scoring low. You talked about the bat to ball, the command on the mound, you know, some of these non-physicality metrics, these non-physicality skills. What do we do as trainers and coaches? How do we address that? How do we bring that into our training?
Yeah, I mean, that's the $1 million question. That's the $1 million question, right? I mean, I think that's trainers all around the world are trying to figure out how to implement that into their training. And I think ultimately at its core it comes down to, there has to be a love for the game of baseball. You're not going to go seek out information on how to improve the mental side of baseball if you don't really love it and you're not willing to dive into it and go seek out that education. um, like, I did a video a couple weeks ago about just turning on a game. It's a, you have an opportunity every time that you're watching a baseball game to call pitches with the catcher, or try to make a manager decision. Even as us coaches, we can try to
Mm-hmm.
manage the game along with that manager on TV. Like, it's all about how you take it. And I think that if you don't have a real love for the game, it's going to be hard to force feed that down. It's going to be hard to force feed that to our kids.
Yep. Yep.
So it's about inspiring the love for the game first and foremost, um, kind of building up that passion. And then when kids are willing to start seeking out some extra information, extra education, how can they improve the mental side of their game? Then we're there for them.
Yeah, that is a great feedback and recommendation to us coaches, is inspiring the love of the game. And that has to be our priority. And we have to, you know, I firmly believe we have to sacrifice some of the skill development or some of the tech work or some of the drill work to make sure that we are teaching that athlete to love the game, or inspiring that athlete to love the game, so that they're motivated to come back, go study, go learn more, go watch games. You know, there's tangible ways that we can do that. Maybe we sacrifice a practice time to go watch a college game. You know, maybe
Yeah.
We meet the athlete where they're at. We get them out there on their social media, and we have them look for the right things on social media, not just the 108 exit velos or the 103-mile-an-hour pitches, but go study the IQ plays. And so I do think that there is tangible ways that we as coaches and trainers can bring this into our portfolio.
Right. And I thought you said it really well you were helping me run a practice the other night, and I thought you said it really well to our guys that we were doing a machine scrimmage where, they're getting fastballs down the middle generally, every pitch, and the skill and the talent level is going to be fairly even across the board because these are all capable high school varsity level players. So in terms of somebody standing out, in terms of hitting the ball hard or showing off an arm across the diamond, that's not going to stand out as much as the shortstop that's like taking leadership, positioning guys into different spots. Like, hey, this is a lefty. He's probably going to cheat to a fastball here with a guy on second base. Try to pull one. Let's play him to pull a little bit. Like, if there's a guy that's really showing off his IQ and doing things right, like that's going to stand out way more to somebody if they were to come watch a practice than a kid that goes 4 for 4 with 4 doubles in a machine scrimmage.
Yeah. Yeah, and I frankly I think that we've gotten lazy as coaches, and we've just sort of ignored those things, or we've just focused on the skill side so much, or the physicality side so much, that we just haven't put a priority to that, and we're not listening to the college coaches and the pro guys. Like, we have to develop that side of the game as well. We have to bring the intangibles back. We have to bring that IQ up, and we have to value that, and we have to find ways to get our guys to value that, because ultimately if they're motivated to learn how to do that better, like, I see guys that are motivated to block like you or receive like you. Like, I see our catchers doing that, but are they motivated to be a step of the head of the hitter when they're calling a game? Are they motivated to figure out how to call a back pick without a coach having to implement a pickoff system or whatever? Like, I know there's those intangibles that you see the game with. How it's so it's we have to focus on how to bring that back into our development.
Right, and it takes a level of patience too,
Yep.
because you want basically everything you do in game in terms of managing the game. It's all risk reward. You're weighing the risk versus the reward. Like you brought up the back pick thing as a catching guy. Maybe if your pitcher's struggling a little bit, he's in a little bit of a jam, it's worth the risk to try to steal an out somewhere on the bases. But then you turn that around, you turn that scenario around, your pitcher's cruising through 6 innings, gives up random hit in the 6th inning. It's a tie ball game. Then your catcher tries to backpick the guy at first base, overthrows it into right field. Now all of a sudden your pitcher just went from being in cruise control. Now he's got a man on third with nobody out. And that risk wasn't quite worth it. So it's about managing, teaching our kids
Yeah.
when to take the risk, when to play it a little bit safer, when to try to stretch a double into a triple. Like those things generally that us coaches, it's kind of second nature to us, but to high school baseball players, that's not something they think about every day.
And I think, just building off of that one more level, like how we as coaches reward that, how we teach that, how we talk through that. Last week I was watching an athlete, a junior in high school, and he was on the machine, and the machine it was an angled machine, so it wasn't just simple cookie pitches. They had some move to them, and I saw him, making adjustments and moving his barrel to the ball, and not so focused on just trying to max everything out, but really trying to make it situational. And I think it's really important that we as trainers and coaches like recognize that and reward that, because that's going to lead to the players feeling confident that those skills are important to us. I think you've given some really good examples here of how we as trainers and coaches need to adjust our development focus to meet some of the needs that the game is lacking in.
Right. And ultimately we want to empower our guys. We would rather, I've always said, I would rather dial a kid back because they're being too aggressive than try to, kick a kid in the rear end and get him going because he's playing it too safe. So we have to give our kids the freedom to make those mistakes and make it more of a teaching moment than you know, embarrassing the kid in front of everybody if he does make an aggressive mistake like that. Like, I would rather the kid take the risk and learn from it and just kind of keep that information in his back pocket moving forward than never fail in that situation. And then when it is crunch time, we don't want that. We don't want that to be his first time failing. So we do have to allow a little bit of freedom in terms of the baseball IQ side, just to make those mistakes and play the game aggressive. And we can always dial a kid back. It's hard to get them going, though.
What else, Hunter? What else this offseason do you desire or anticipate that you want to see us get better at when it comes to development? What's something else that is going to be maybe a focus of yours in this new role?
I would say just collaboration. Just make sure that our movements in the weight room complement our skill movements that we're doing. So just I don't want a kid like last year we had a lot of kids going into the pitching and they would do a bunch of med ball throws and then they go into the weight room and do a bunch of med ball throws. There wasn't quite that communication factor between our pitching department, weight room department, hitting department. I just want to make sure that we're maximizing every single hour that we get because our time is limited with these kids. And we want to make the most of every minute that we have. So um, that's why I said just kind of a general approach is going to be hammer the core three movements in the weight room, build general size, general power, general strength, build some speed and athleticism in there, use that for what we know it's good for, and then we can focus on the rotational, maybe the mobility side of things in our specific skill sessions. And I want there to be a little bit of communication like, hey, so and so is struggling, he can't rotate to his left as well as he rotates right. We can pull that kid aside, prescribe him some mobility movements in the weight room to complement his lifting as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. We'll just kind of finish up here. I know, you and I've kind of talked a little bit. I know you're, putting out more content. You're putting out
Right.
more information, sharing more publicly on these types of topics. Why do you feel that's important now for you?
Yeah, it's definitely not a lane I'm all that comfortable in yet. What took us forever to get this podcast recorded because I'm not the best with technology. So, but I do think it is important to, if you're going to teach kids nowadays and teach high schoolers or college guys or whoever it is important to have stuff out there if you want to be the one educating them. Because, I mean, just take me for example. Like I've learned the majority of the stuff about coaching from other people on social media that I follow. Like I just pull little tidbits from them that people who I agree with their opinion on things and just try to learn from other people and implement that into my own style and make it my own. So I do think there is value to putting stuff out there and putting educational content out there for our kids to see. And maybe, who knows, maybe one of them will turn into an all-American type of player and they pulled one thing that I put out there. That's a success in my book. So
yeah. We skipped over one topic that I want to come back to real quick. I'm sorry.
yep.
This is too good to miss over. But you have talked to me about how you felt really fortunate to have some pretty special catchers that trained with you over the last few years.
Yep.
And not only special because they were talented, but there was just a certain way that they went about their training. They always wanted it to be harder. They always wanted it to be more difficult. They always wanted, they didn't want it to be comfortable training. Maybe just share on that and talk about how that is, such an important attribute that they possessed.
Yeah, I was very fortunate when I first got here, when I took over the catching side of things here, that I had some studs to work with. I would love to take credit for them, but they kind of built themselves into what they are. I just kind of helped where I could along the way, but I did have a group of about 4 or 5 guys that we had a little text thread going, and they would bug me constantly to come in there and open the facility for them, gear up with them, show me, like they would ask me to show them kind of what my pregame routine was. What would I do if I had an hour to train defense? Like what kind of stuff would I be working on? And they would always bug me. We'd be working the machine, and they'd say, "Hey, I want like a big league slider here. I want to block this thing." And our machines can get pretty nasty. So, uh, in a training setting, sometimes with catching and blocking, I always kind of err on the side of caution. The last thing I want is a kid getting hurt because they're blocking a 90-mile-an-hour slider. But they would bug me until I would until I'd set it on the hardest setting possible. And I mean, we've got a Division I catcher out of them. We had one of them commit to one of the top JUCOs in the country. We have another one at Wash U who's going to be an everyday guy for him this year. We've got another one who's he's a top D2 catcher in the country right now. So they're having a lot of success, and I do think it is just a tribute to how they went about it. They always challenge themselves. So I'm always kind of drawn to athletes that attack it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. I think that's a great way to kind of finish this up. I think, the data that you've collected shows us what we need to work on. And then sort of the approach that you want to encourage our guys to have inside of their training will allow us to attack that better. And then the collaboration between the trainers and the coaches, super excited to see that all pan out and come to fruition this year. So Hunter, thanks for your time. And where can people find you on Instagram? I know you, Mr. Tech here. Let's see if you even know your Instagram handle.
Yeah, it's H Hisky with Instagram and Twitter. So anybody in my past, I changed I got too much grief in the past when I set my Instagram account when I was a high school kid to Big Hisker. I changed it to H Hisky. It's a little more professional sounding. I was sick of my 15 and 16-year-olds giving me crap about it. So
there you go.
Yeah, H Hisky with Twitter or Instagram. So that's where I primarily will live.
All right. We'll look forward to more content on this. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in to this Hardball Talks. And we'll see you at the next one.